Why do you think the gender wage gap is so prevalent today in our society despite multiple acts and laws being passed?
Honestly, at the end of the day, it comes back down to stereotypes and the fact that many of those acts are not truly effective. They do not truly regulate the problem. And honestly, it is awful that this is still an issue because we are placing less worth on a human being because of their gender, which is ridiculous, as all people should have the equal opportunity to pursue prosperity and a high quality of life. And at the end of the day, it comes down to bias and the fact that many companies today are still run by men.
What social injustice would you want to change that's so prevalent today in this world?
Definitely in the healthcare market, there's the people who need to get healthcare the most aren't able to because of the ever-increasing prices. There's too much power at the top. There's too much bureaucracy in our government, and that's one thing I want to change. I want to increase the competition in our healthcare market here in Tennessee.
How would you address mental health in our society?
Well, the first step in addressing mental health is creating a whole new institution to address it. Besides the Department of Health, the Tennessee Institution for Violence Prevention will break off and be, like a sub-department of the Department of Health. And what it's going to do is going to work with communities and close-knit communities and school leaders as well as students to develop plans on how we can better address mental health, and we need to allocate more funding towards this program for mental health because we've been failed time and time again. And we also need to put mental health in schools. That way students can get the help they deserve because most guidance counselors are concerned about making schedules instead of helping how they really should. So this will help with that.
No, just like, okay, we're good.
Why do you think the gender wage gap is so prevalent today despite multiple laws and acts being passed, such as like the Equal Pay Act?
Okay, so I think one of the reasons definitely is because a lot of women are still themselves not going into jobs that are higher paying. For example, a wage gap definitely exists because men dominate a lot of the really high paying jobs simply because maybe sometimes women are pressured not to. I know for a fact that my mom actually has a personal example where she was pressured. She wasn't even allowed to train as a neurosurgeon. So I think that's very prevalent in that women experience a pressure that makes it hard for them to go towards the higher paying jobs.
What social injustice would you want to change that's so prevalent today in our society?
Today still, I think the exploitation of just resources in third world countries is still a huge problem. I don't think there's enough attention brought to it. I don't think there's enough done about it, especially in countries like those African countries with not really a strong government presence, very high poverty rates, but they have rich resources. A lot of times that's exploited through just military movement, things like that. Especially countries in the Middle East, rich in oil, rich in gold. I think there's a lot of military movements involved in that as well that I don't think should be there necessarily.
How would you address mental health in our society?
I think that's a really good question. I think that the mental health institute should be improved because a lot of the homeless people do face mental health issues, and I think that it's important to reform the mental health institutes and make them not such a scary place and make them more welcoming. And I think that it also goes into job creation by hiring more people such as qualified therapists, or even make it a volunteer program and come and hang out with those mentally disabled, like people do at nursing homes and job homes.
Why do you think the gender wage gap is still prevalent today despite multiple acts and laws being passed, such as the Equal Pay Act?
I think that the majority of the problem with the gender wage gap, has less to do with legislation that needs to be passed and more to do with enforcement of that legislation. Majority of Tennessee is in a rural county or rural city or whatever you want to call it, and many times those are the specific places which are not seeing that same repercussions given to small businesses or even big businesses who are not abiding by actual legislation that's been passed here. Jaeger also passed in real life. It's there, we're just not enforcing it.